is especially to educate those minds and tell them the benefits of passive investing.
I think I'm going to start with just saying that, look, the vast majority of the listeners predominantly are high income earners, right? So we're looking at people whose household incomes are, say, $300,000-$500,000, that give or take at the minimum, right? And while a lot of people who are making that money or slightly more, hopefully a lot more than that, they don't feel like they're rich because, they're in very high demanding jobs. They've got families, typically the type of people that you talked about are conservative in terms of they don't spend money on stupid things, right? They're saving, investing. They've already immigrated from a country. So they've done all the hard work, right? So they know how much hard work they've done to get to this stage, right? It's a lot of work, right? So what I tell a lot of those people is, this, by the way, is the same story with my brother-in-law. He's not an immigrant, but he's Desi, right? He works at Google. He makes a lot of money. Now, he's very good with his money. They don't spend money on stupid things. But the biggest expense you have on your books, whether you realize it or you don't, as a high income earning family or a person, isn't your mortgage, isn't, say, your kids if they go to college or a private school. No, it's the amount of taxes you pay, right? And so think about it this way. If you're in a state like California, right? If you're, say, making 400, 500,000, I'm assuming that's you're in the higher, I think around 450,000. Don't quote me on that. You're in the highest tax bracket, right? So this means any amount of dollars you make post that bracket, you're going to be paying close to 50% in taxes on that, right? Every incremental dollar is 50. So for instance, if you made $1 million above that highest slab, you're not really making $1 million. You're making maybe 500,000. Right? So you have to start thinking like that. Where is the rest of this money going? And if you're conventionally investing, say, just in stocks, and by the way, I personally invest in index funds and mutual funds and all of that. If you're just doing that and you're not doing other things, well, basically you have to realize you're not maximizing the potential returns that you can make for your family. And the big reason for that is, look, that the vast majority of the financial advice on offer. By the way, I'm a CFA charter holder, right? It's a gold standard of portfolio and wealth management, right? But the vast majority of wealth or financial advice that's given, look, even the term wealth management, it says management of wealth. That assumes you already have wealth. If you don't have wealth, you have to create wealth first, right? And you can't create wealth by taking the same advice that says somebody who's making $100,000 or $60,000 and doing the exact same thing that they were doing, because you make 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times the money. You have a way different set of options available to you. And if you don't take advantage of those options, you don't get into tax advantage vehicles like real estate, you leave a lot of money on the table, right? And this is something, and again, I'm coming back to my brother-in-law example. He knows I do this for a living. He's a pretty financially sophisticated guy. I was in the Bay Area last month, actually, because my wife and kids are traveling. I was in the Bay Area. I was with my brother-in-law. We were hanging out. And during the day, because he's working from home, he was hearing me talk with a bunch of my different investors, similar sort of profile, right? So at the end of the day, we're just watching, I think we were watching TV or a movie or something. So he's like, okay, so tell me about this depreciation write-offs and what are you doing? And again, he kind of knew it in his head, but it's like, when we were talking right before this podcast, we all know, as an example, we have to eat right, we have to exercise, we have to meditate. Knowing is one thing, doing it is something different, right? So he knew about all of these things, but he knew about it, heard about it, put it in the back of his head, didn't really do anything about it, right? So him and I start talking. And I kind of explained, okay, this is what happens. I showed him my tax returns. You see, we make money. This is how much tax write-offs we get. So our tax burden, even though we're making similar or more money than you, we're paying no taxes on that money. And he's like, well, how can you pay no taxes? I was like, well, you get all these write-offs, right? And it got to the point, and this is within a 10-minute conversation, and he's an engineer, right? So he's very analytical. He's a software developer at Google. It got to a point where after 10, 15 minutes, he's like, all right, I'm going to go to sleep, whatever. Next day he was working from home. He didn't do any work. He spent the whole day making some really complex, fancy model, right? Comes back to me at the end of the day and says, hey, do you want to look at this model? And I was like, no, I don't want to look at this model, right? And he said, look, I basically sat down for the whole day. I knew the answer in the first 10 minutes. I could not believe it. And he said, and I'm literally quoting him. He said, look, because my sister is doing her master's in data science from Georgia Tech, right? She said, if your sister graduates, and unless she gets like, say, a $250,000 job right out of school, which is probably not going to happen because, there's good jobs, right? It is actually worthwhile for her to not do a job, sit at home, become a real estate professional. We still take the money that we're saving and investing, and as a household, we will make more money. You understand? You try to explain this to the average person. The average person does not. Well, how would somebody who's going to make six figures, how would that household make more money if the person who was going to make six figures stayed at home and didn't do the job, right? Because we're trained from day one. Do a job, go to work, make money, save, invest. The game is rigged, okay? This is not a conspiracy theory. The game is rigged because if you don't take advantage of the same investments and the same tax breaks that other rich people are taking, you're basically like a McDonald's worker just with a higher month hourly wage.